Well, good evening, everyone. Let's welcome everyone back to our new season of Let's Talk. We took a break during the holidays, and tonight is our first live show back for the new year, so I guess I have to tell you Happy New Year. We want to make sure we're providing you with content that you enjoy. If you have topics you'd like us to explore, please leave them in our comment, in our box, and we'd love to hear from you. Everything that we're doing this month in relationship is based on what you have asked us for. So we have looked at what you've written down, and we are going to be talking about relationships the whole month of February. We're excited about our new season, and we have some great guests lined up for you. As our custom is, we like to take the month of February and focus on relationships. And in the incoming weeks, we'll be talking to singles who are living their best life now. They are wanting to be married, but they are enjoying life the best that they know how. And there's many of them, they're navigating that word in the meantime. While they're waiting, in the meantime, what they're doing, they're being productive and they're building their wealth. They're building and purchasing property. They're doing things. And we looked at how God is using many of them to build this platform. And we're using your comments to also build this new platform as we get started in this new season. We're going to be talking about unconditional love and coming up in a few weeks. What does the Bible say about that? Many of us talk about the filial love and then the erotic love, but what about just loving people unconditionally, meeting them where they are, like the Lord does for us? We're going to focus a lot on our interpersonal relationships. We want to talk about those quite a bit. We also want to know, listen, we're going to explore the last Tuesday of the month. We're going to be talking to Bridget and John Fox. Many of you asked for them to come back, and that's a married couple that's been married over 30 years. They're going to be coming back with us. And so we need to know exactly what you want to know about relationships. Don't be afraid to send the questions in. Don't be afraid to jot something down on the side. Listen, invite a friend, share our page, ask the questions. We'll answer as truthfully as we can, as biblically as possible. We'll answer those questions. And sometimes you hear people say, I wish I could see someone for who they really are. Sometimes you meet a friend and you really want to get to know them and you're not sure what to do. It's time for us to ask the hard questions and not be afraid to do that. And so what we did, we invited a family therapist, Sister Adrienne Turner, and we're going to be discussing maintaining our relationships during pandemic. She's a family therapist. She works with children, youth. She works with couples. And we're going to be talking about that in a few minutes. But in the next few weeks, we want you to understand what happened in 2020 and 2021, how everything came to a screeching halt. Relationships, we're talking about domestic violence increase, suicide. Have you seen the news with how many suicidal increases there is? Have you noticed what the virus has done to many families? Mothers are stressed from being at home with the children over this last year with all the virtual things, not getting the space and time they need for themselves. So we've seen quite a bit happen during this time of COVID. Many have not been able to see family and loved ones in nursing homes for almost a year. We hear parents talking about the added stress of working from home while the kids are doing virtual learning. Many women feel their days are never ending and their responsibilities have increased enormously. Our country is divided politically, socially, economically, and religiously. The church is also suffering. We debate over the validity of the virus. Some don't believe in it. Some think it's a hoax. Some think it's a joke. Well, it's not. So we also talk about masks. Who should wear a mask and who shouldn't wear a mask? Should you be vaccinated and should you not be vaccinated? Then we had Black Lives Matter. Then All Lives Matter. We had so many different areas of life that we were just divided on. And many of our friendships were strained during the pandemic because of political belief systems. You saw it back and forth on Facebook, and someone was Democratic and they didn't like this, and they were making prophetic declarations over what was going to happen during so many things. And that left the family, left the church bombarded and not knowing what to do. We hear rising cases of children struggling with depression, increase in drug and alcohol abuse, as well as increased physical abuse in homes. Well, even the church has been greatly affected. No one has ever pastored in a pandemic that I know of like this. I don't know of anyone of my friends who have ever had to go through this except what we're facing with now. Circumstances is weighing heavy on the church. Finances have been affected. Giving is affected. Families affected. Coming to church. There's a lot of people who are fearful of coming out because they're not sure what's next. And the irony of it all is that the examples given are just a few of the side effects of COVID and the pandemic. Suicide this week. We saw how many cases. We saw Regina's son committing suicide. We saw mental illness on the rise. We saw former Miss America committing beautiful. An attorney that made a decision not to live anymore. People are really genuinely scared of the future and what's next. So we want to take some time tonight, invite our friend Adrienne Turner, one of the most effective therapists that we know of, that's doing something to address some of these issues here in Pittsburgh, and I know in Boston and some of the other states that she works. But we really want to bring her on now. We want to invite Adrienne to come on and talk to us about what she's seeing in her office regarding this pandemic, regarding how it's affecting families. And we just want, well, let her tell us. Good evening, Adrienne. Thank you for joining us tonight. We want you to highlight the effects of the pandemic and the unprecedented toll that it's having on our interpersonal relationships. So introduce yourself to us tonight.
You did a great job already, Pastor. I'm Adrienne Turner. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I have a practice in 2 locations in Pittsburgh called Helping Others Heal. I'm also in Boston, and my practice is only relationship counseling there, which is called Our Covenant Matters. Sprinkled in other places, but basically I help people deal with their relationships to the best of my ability and God's ability in me. And I'm excited to talk to you about what's going on as far as the things you'd already mentioned earlier.
Wow. We're trying to navigate our way through worldwide pandemic. I know for us, before the pandemic, I was doing about 60,000 miles a year traveling. That has come to a screeching halt.
Sure.
There were so many things. Vacation was you just hopped on a plane and go. Now we can't do any of those things. Everything has literally shifted. You can't go out the country. I was speaking to Prophet Remington. Every time he goes home, he has to have a COVID test. Every time he comes back, he has to have everything has changed. So in your counseling, what have been some common reoccurring themes with your clients? What seems to be the overwhelming them the most?
People didn't realize how much they didn't like the people that they were married to until the pandemic hit. So, I know that sounds funny, but really
It's
and
not really.
we, right, really and truly, we just got paralyzed being together in a home, and people didn't understand how well they would have to learn how to get along with someone until you were doing it for 3 months, 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years. And some people did not handle it very well because they didn't have the underpinning or the undergirding of a good relationship to begin with. So then being contained together made it much more difficult to just navigate. How do I even get along with someone that I don't even like, that I don't want to be around, I feel blessed when he or she goes to work and now there is no work. We're on top of each other and the kids are screaming and running all over. So it's been very difficult for people to come to terms with, this is what my life now looks like, and they didn't really know how to navigate it well.
And there was no gyms open to go to the gym.
Nope.
Everything was shut down. So it was, and if the relationship wasn't solid in the first place, what we see is cracks begin to take place.
Sure.
Do
Sure.
you find there were more arguments?
There were many more arguments, but there was also a lot more drug and alcohol abuse, and there was definitely a dramatic increase in domestic violence. I mean, there were many episodes of real brutality within your home because people did not know how to manage their emotions. This was the pandemic has been unprecedented in that mental health, even if people didn't necessarily believe in mental health, they came face to face with, what is all this stress, this anger, this frustration, this depression, this anxiety that's coming out of nowhere? So even if you didn't necessarily believe in it, it showed up in a way that said, you can't ignore me. I'm here and you have to figure out a way to deal with me.
Wow. What advice do you have for couples coping with the stress during the pandemic that never had it before? They felt they were okay. They felt we got along. To me, in some relationships, it's like we may not be lovey-dovey, huggy, but we get along.
Hmm.
But then when you in this pandemic, you realize we're not even getting along. So now we're not getting along. We don't like each other, but maybe one person doesn't have the money to move out, or they don't have the money to get a counselor. So what is some of the advice you give them when they find themselves just being stressed out?
I very much believe in covenant and that two become one, but I also believe we can't forget that there are two separate people. You have to find a way to take ownership of your self care. You have to find ways where you're not constantly on top of each other. And maybe you don't live in a big house, but is there a backyard? Is there some place that we can go? Do you take a drive in the car? So if you don't want to get contaminated or worry about infection, because that's where a lot of fear and anxiety came from, can someone go for a drive while the other person takes their hour so that they can just decompress and not have to worry about the kids and the sound of life and all the things that were just so upsetting and overwhelming? It's still important that the two that are one take their time to, hey, let me get my space over here, you get your space over here, so we can learn how to stay together in this bundle that that we've now found ourselves thrown in, but also not deny that we need separate time and separate space so that we can still be individuals, so that we can be together and make this work.
Did you find some relationships that got better? Were there any that got stronger?
Yes. And I
Okay,
know that
I'm glad to
sounds
hear that. I'm
amazing.
glad to hear that.
I know that sounds amazing to people, but we have been America's such a busy place. I mean, I've been other places and I've seen countries like when I went to Italy and definitely when I went to Spain, people relax. They take time to walk
Wow.
and stroll and laugh and with each other and have lunch in the afternoon. I remember I went to Spain last year with my daughter and we went to try to go someplace to eat. And they're like, oh no, we're closed because we just take a break. We don't necessarily do that very well here. So there were lots of couples that were so busy and so consumed with, we have to make this money and we got to do this and the kids need that and there's this sports thing and it costs all. And then when all that got shut down, it was like, hi, nice to meet you again. Nice to see you and spend time with you. And they realized that there was really something there that they hadn't had a chance to really nurture because they're so busy. This was a blessing for a lot of people.
Yeah, because I noticed on some of the programs they were showing couples that were cooking together that had
Yes,
never done that, but now
yes.
they're both home and they're like, well, let's make cookies with the kids. Let's find things that are
Mhm.
creative to at least let it work. So I'm glad to hear that some of it. I think my husband and I survived very well. I think we did because he couldn't go to work, but I came to the church. That's what I did. I would come up to the church during the day and I would take time to read. I'd walk the sanctuary to get my steps in. And if it's a nice day, I would sit outside. So I did get a break. So I didn't feel like we were just locked in,
Mhm.
for that time. And I thought to myself, did people really grow? I don't think everybody fought during the pandemic.
No,
I'm hoping that some people got closer, they grew better. The
sure.
pandemic is highlighting many cases effectiveness in communication. What do you see in their relationships with communication? How are we doing with that?
There was something said about there's a number of seconds, and I don't know where the research came from, that people allow your partner to talk before they've already thought of, oh, I'm going to say this. You're telling me something that I might be defensive about, don't necessarily want to hear. So now you're explaining this, but I've already come up with an answer. And I got an opportunity to tell couples, let's learn how to have a safe zone, a space where if you come to me and you want to talk to me and say something, we set a timer and you let me vent, get it out, express to you what it is. And at the end of the 10 minutes, as it's 10 minutes in my office, the other person who has been told already, you aren't going to respond to what they said. So if you liked it, loved it, whatever, doesn't matter. You don't get a chance to say anything back. You're going to ask one question and it's 6 words. What do you need from me? So I spent a lot of time teaching people, ask your partner what they're really asking of you and see if that's something that you can meet. Stop worrying about what they're saying and how you can defend it. What do you need from me so that they can understand you heard them and you want to meet their needs?
So it's really an art to listening then. There is
Art
not.
to listening.
Yeah, because I know me, I'm thinking about what I'm getting ready to be. I'm going to rebuttal or what I, I know
Oh,
me.
I got something to say.
Yeah, I got something to say, and you're taking too long to get your point. So
Yes, yes.
so what you're saying is there's an art to listening.
Sure.
Listen, and there's this thing about a 17-second rule where you give the person some time before you even say what you're going to say. And so
Mhm.
you say 10 minutes though, about 10 minutes.
I let the couple, each person talk for 10 minutes, and then the other person that was listening, actively listening, because you don't get to rebut what you just heard, just ask the question, what do you need from me? Because your partner's trying to convey to you there's something that's missing, somewhere there's lack, somewhere they think you can meet a need in them. And if we're so busy just listening to answer back or to retort, you don't get the message that your partner is really asking you to meet a need in them. And that's important for you to do.
What happens when you find your partner is being dismissive regarding something that's important to you? Like, okay, I want to talk about money. Not now. Well, when? What do you do when you are listening and you're trying to communicate to someone? I need you to hear me in this matter because it's a serious matter. But then, like, not right now. They keep dismissing that. How do you get them to focus on something like that?
I am a big believer in family meetings. There are times where I don't want to be aggravated with this every day. So don't come and ask me, okay, so we're going to sit down like grown folks and we're going to decide in a calendar system. We're going to talk this one day a month. We're going to talk about these are the agenda items. And some people just, you bring one agenda item to the table, but at least you get them to the table. The point is to get them to the table. So if you want to talk about the budget being completely and totally out of control, then when we meet on March the 7th, we're going to sit down and talk about that one item. And we're going to talk it through. We're going to sit down and work on a budget. We're going to go through what all the concerns are and how we fix this together. It's important that you get heard, but it's also important that you hear your partner that doesn't want to talk about 15 items. Some people can't process when you bring
Agree.
so many things to the table. Let's talk about this one item, and maybe you can stretch it to two, but people have to be heard. But the other person also doesn't want to feel like they're being held hostage. I'm already hostage enough sitting in this house with you all day. They don't want to be held hostage. You and your 15 line item things that they just can't process.
That's too much. I think yeah, I have a 2 minute two limit. That's it. I can't, I don't do well. I don't because I will shut down on you if you start going too long. My husband teased. He said, when my wife started rubbing her knee, I know it's time to stop talking because I'm like, okay, you're repeating yourself, you know. But I think, how do you deal with the unresolved conflicts, though? We have a conflict and they're not hearing me. He's not hearing me. She's not hearing me. And I see it so many times, even in church, not even just in marriages.
Sure,
People
sure.
that are not able to resolve conflicts well. It's like when we disagree, oh, I'm done with you. I don't want to talk to you no more. We give the silent treatment. I don't talk to you for weeks. I go around the church so I don't have to see you. That is just so off. How do you help people resolve conflicts?
I have this system in my counseling that they're called the rules of engagement. So, what the rules of engagement are, you tell me what are the things that make you feel unsafe if I do them in the midst of a fight or when we're having a disagreement. For some people, if they have abandonment issues, if you walk out of the room on them when they're trying to share with you what's happening with them, that automatically triggers something in them and they can't process things. So what you would say to your partner is, I know we're going to have a difficult conversation. So here are the things that I need as far as my rules of engagement, that if you do these things or don't do these things, I will feel safe. I will feel safe if you don't walk out mid-sentence when I'm trying to share my heart with you. The other person, go ahead.
No, no, that sounds good. I like that.
The other person may say, okay, so abandonment's not one of my issues. But one of my issues would be if you start yelling. When I was a kid, if someone starts yelling at me, then it sends me automatically into another stratosphere where I feel like I'm not safe. I feel like I have to defend myself and protect myself. So that person's rule of engagement would be, okay, even if we're going to have a difficult conversation, I'm willing to have the conversation. But if you start yelling, if you start screaming, if you start calling me names or belittling me, I'm going to shut down and I will not participate in this conversation. Every couple needs to know what the rules of engagement are so your partner feels safe with you and they know that they can have even a difficult conversation with you.
Wow. Well, have you noticed some of the pros and cons that the pandemic had on the singles? Do you see the same thing in the singles as the couples? I know the couples have someone that they're living with, but a lot of people singles are by themselves. They don't have roommates. They're by themselves.
Mhm.
What are some of the issues they're facing?
As a single myself, what I discovered during the pandemic is I had to get comfortable with really being honest about who I am and how much I like myself. And in the areas where I thought there were cracks or deficits in how I treated myself and how I cared for myself, I made sure to bolster those up. So I'm finding with a lot of singles when I'm speaking to them, I will tell them, I want to know what you're passionate about. What makes you tick? I want to know what keeps you alive, what makes you feel like you're vital, even if it's just to yourself. Take note of those things and start working on those things. This was an unprecedented time to really get to know who you are. If anybody missed that, I don't know where you've been. You had so much unadulterated time to say, I have to deal with me because there was nowhere to go to
There's
do
nowhere to
anything
go.
else. So when I talk to singles, I ask them, what have you learned about yourself? Where can you take better care of you? Where can you honor yourself in a bigger and better way so that you, even though you're alone, you are working on things so that when this eventually is over and we can get back out to life, that you have learned and you have grown and you have something new and interesting and exciting to share about who you are.
Wow, I like that. And you know what? It's not just the singles because I did that. I kept on saying while I was while I call it isolation. While I was in isolation, I'm going to have revelation. I kept saying that to myself.
Yes,
Revelation on myself.
absolutely.
What I tolerate and what I can't tolerate. When I come out of this, certain things I'm not doing anymore. Like for instance, I was running my prayer line and the church line 7 days a week, and I said that's too much. I have no day that I rest. I need to
Wow.
take a day. I had to really begin to see you're giving and giving and giving. When are you going to stop for a minute and say, this is my actual day off and
Yes,
I'm not doing ministry? I
yes.
didn't realize how many days I was pouring out. And so during the pandemic, I was trying to make sure the seniors were being taken care of, the singles were being reached, and not realizing you're working 7 days a week.
Hmm.
And before you know it, you're giving out and you're not really receiving back in. Have
Right.
you noticed an increase in the children and teens being withdrawn and depressed? Have you seen much of that in family therapy?
I have. And family therapy is not something that hadn't done prior to the pandemic much. But when the pandemic hit, the calls for family therapy were skyrocketing because
Well,
people just could not navigate the teenagers' attitudes and all the stuff that was going on in schools.
oh
And what
yeah.
I don't think people realized was these are people with less coping skills and strategies than we do, that we have. So when you see them having an attitude and they don't want to do their homework and they're stomping around the house, take a moment and ask your children, how are you processing this isolation? Because mental health hits at all ages. Lots of kids were getting labeled as bad and mischievous and all kinds of other stuff when they were depressed, when they were anxious, when they didn't know what to do. They were watching their parents scramble, fight, not know what to do about money, worry about whether they could get even basic necessities like toilet paper. All of those things that they were watching were absolutely affecting them, but they got mislabeled as being these bad kids. No, they were struggling. And lots of times people didn't take a moment to say, are you okay?
Because we always just we say the kids are bad. They're just bad. She's just
Hmm.
bad. She just has an attitude. She
Yes,
constantly has an attitude. We love to say that. My daughter has an attitude. She's attitude 24/7. But that attitude is on the line for something. It's on the
yes,
line. Something else is
absolutely.
causing her to have an attitude. Do we address that?
We have to address it because you were talking earlier about suicide. Teenagers at an alarming rate are committing suicide. I know that Miss Universe you were talking about was 30, and I don't know how old Regina King's son was. But
That's
we're
it.
talking about young people
Yes.
that have just decided, I can't do this anymore. You have to ask questions because you have to know what the warning signs are for things like that. But lots of times people don't want to ask questions because, well, they're probably fine, or it's just them having an attitude. No, people are struggling. You have to lean in and say, what do you need?
Tell us, right? Since we're here, tell us
Mhm.
what some of the warning signs as parents. And listen, those of you that are on with us tonight, send us over some questions. Ask us so I can ask Doc Adrian what is about. Don't be afraid to send those questions in. Tell us some of the signs to look for because I'm sure Regina King was trying to figure out something. Did she miss anything her son had gone through? The Miss America, 30 years old. Who would want to fall from 60 floors? And
Mm.
I'm sure her mother's trying to figure, did we miss anything?
Uh, Lots of times when it comes to people being in distress, it's the small things that maybe seem out of place, but you have to pay attention to them. If you have a child that loves their pet and all of a sudden they're like, I'm getting I want to share the dog now. I like so and so doesn't have a dog, and I know it would mean a lot to them if they had it. They start sharing or just giving away their possessions. They struggled so long to find a PlayStation 5, but now, well, the next door neighbor probably could use it. I'm already have so much stuff. I just want to start gifting things. That is absolutely for a teenager. Those are warning signs. When they start giving away their things and things that they once had a lot of pleasure in are no longer things that they're interested in. But they are guising it under I'm being generous when what it really is I have a plan that I'm not going to be here. So I already want to take care of somebody else because I know what I'm going to do.
Wow. And what about withdrawal? Like
Yes.
they won't come out of their room. They're not eating. I
Yes.
know a lot of parents have, it's hard to get my teenager out of the room. They're either on the phone all the time or I can't even talk to them to sit on them. They don't even want to talk. Are they just withdrawing because they don't want to be bothered?
Sometimes they don't want to be bothered, but sometimes they're withdrawing and they're taking like steps in processing and planning and thinking about the unthinkable that they don't want to be here. So if you see signs like them withdrawing, if you hear your child talking about, I feel like I'm being a burden or a bother, so I don't want to talk to you about my problems, those are absolutely red flags. You never want anybody to walk around feeling like they're a burden to you or that well, I'm bothering you too much, but I'm talking to you about the same things. Those are signs that say, I don't want anybody to be burdened by me, so I'm going to take their burden off and I'm going to get out of here. Those are things you have to ask questions about. I want you to come back out into the family room. Maybe you don't want to sit around like for hours with us, but we have to set up some structured time where we're sitting together in the living room and we're laughing and we're watching one show. Give us an hour so that we know that we're connecting with you. You have to get them engaged and not let them just fade into the background because that's usually a dangerous sign.
Wow. So routines are critical then. Having good routines in the
Yeah.
house and the family's routine. We do breakfast together.
Mhm.
One of the things I know for me, with my husband in the evening when he come in, we do dinner together so I can ask, how was your day? What's going on? Or with my children, I try to meet with them at least once a week for lunch, just to
Mhm.
see them. Because now everything is on the phone, but I like to see them. I like to look in the eyes, see how they're doing. So I
Yes.
think I think routines are important. What do you think about routines in their well-being during this time?
It's so important. And I'm like you, when I was a kid, 6 p.m., we were eating dinner together. There were 4 kids, 2 parents. We were at the table. There were no phone calls. There's no internet or anything like that, but there was nothing else going on except sitting at that table. We're having a meal. Nothing's going to interrupt that. You have to have structures in place in your family system that said, this is who we are as a family. We spend time together. We ask and inquire of each other what's going on. What do you need? How are you feeling? How your day was? Lots of people let that just escape by. Oh, like, I don't want to talk to these kids. I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to sit with my parents. They don't care about what's going on with me anyway. You have to set up structures in your family system that say, no, we care about each other. We come together. We ask questions. We do things together. Go buy chess games or Monopoly. Find something that says we come together, we care about what's happening with each other, and we ask questions and we do things together so that nobody feels like they're just getting like pushed to the side or slipping through the cracks.
With amount of computer games that they're using now, do you think that takes away a lot from the family time? Because people are always on these computer games. There's so much virtual things going on. That really, even just the phone, I get to sometime when I go to dinner, I tell the kids, turn the phone off. We're having dinner.
Mhm.
Everybody is seemed to be consumed with their phones or with games, and they can spend hours doing that and don't want to interact.
I have another rule. I have lots of rules when it comes to family meetings and family counseling. When you get home in the evening, your phones go in baskets. You should have a basket or something by your front door that says it's decompression time. And these people in this room, in this world of mine, they're my focus right now. And there should be a set standard time that says, like for the hour that you first come home, then we have dinner together, then we might play a game together. If you want your phone again, you can have it for an hour before you go to bed, but we do things that don't have mindless screen time so that we can interact, so we can talk, so that we can actually fellowship with each other.
That I like that because I know when we go to dinner, my kids are always on me. Let's put the phones away. Let's talk to each other. Let's
Mhm.
communicate. That's a good idea. What about the social distancing and quarantine and isolation? How do you see that? How do you see that in affecting friendships? Like I'm a lunch and breakfast person. I love to meet my friends for lunch and I love to do breakfast. It's something that's just me. But
Mhm.
with the pandemic, especially in the last, I think in the month of January, I want to think, it just seemed as though we had this outbreak of COVID all over again.
Mhm.
And people were afraid to go back into the restaurants. And then I realized things are shifting again. I don't know how long it will be this time,
Right.
but it's affecting a lot of solid relationships, even just being able to go to lunch and go to breakfast.
Some people thrive in isolation, believe it or not. Some people do their most dynamic work and they don't feel like they need people. But other people really feel disconnected and like they just don't belong and they don't have any like true tribe of people. So isolation and the fear of like the numbers going up and people getting sick definitely had an impact, and we're always talking about get off the screens and not screen, but sometimes all you have is FaceTime or Google Duo to get on and say, let me just check in with you for 10 minutes and make sure you're okay. There needs to be something that's set up so that people that are uncomfortable can at least still have contact and feel connected to people so they don't feel so isolated.
One of the questions that came in for you is, do you find this to be race specific? Do you find it's just us that's dealing with this like this and our relationships like this? Or is it
Not
across the
at
board?
all. Just like death, this is the great equalizer. This pandemic and how people have responded to it is the great equalizer. I don't care how rich you are. I don't care how broke you are. The fact of the matter is, this touched all of us. And it leveled some of the wealthiest clients that I have because they didn't know how to process being able to get out, do whatever they wanted. And some people that had a lot of lack, they seem to adjust to it just fine because they were used to living in worlds where they couldn't do anything they wanted to do. But in every way, in every race, for everybody, this touched everybody.
Wow. I think that is so, this is just so critical because I know whether black or white, everybody, I mean, all over the world, it's just
Mhm.
not even just color in America, but all over the world, everyone was affected in some way.
Sure.
And then what I think was difficult to Adrian is the fact that our money's kind of dried up in some areas, and
Mhm.
some people money dried up, but some people prospered. Some people
Absolutely.
became rich actually during the pandemic
Absolutely, they
because
did.
because their services now were increased
Mhm.
where other services were drying up. I know my son said to me, he said, Mom, even in the jewelry business, because all the jewelry stores closed down and he had a private where he could work in a private setting, he found that he got more clients during the pandemic than before the pandemic
Sure.
because they had more of a choice when everything was open. But then when everything shut down, people wanted somewhere safe where they could go into a private setting. So everyone was affected in a different way. But the
Yes.
pandemic has caused a lot of division. Have you noticed? Have you seen what we've seen on Facebook during the pandemic? The political things that were being said, the spiritual things, prophets that were saying things that were not true about the elect. So much happened all during this pandemic.
It was a
What
lot.
have you seen about the division that it's caused?
I noticed a lot in my office, depending, the lines were very clearly marked. There was a line of demarcation between Republicans and Democrats. There were very distinct differences between how those people showed up in my office. Some would come in, like I had a mask on and I'm vaccinated, boosted, all that stuff. They would come in and they wouldn't have a mask on. Oh, I just had COVID last weekend, but I'm fine. I tested it. And they were very clear. Our president, we're talking about number 42, they believed that he said this is a hoax. This is not something that you need to worry about. So they were just very much like, oh, this is all like propaganda, and they just want the Democrats just want you scared. And lots of the Democrats were like, I want to do sessions on video. I'm scared to come to your office. I don't, lots of people just didn't want to leave their home. So there were lots of different views based upon the political sides of the fence, what I saw in my practice.
Wow. There have been reported increased cases of domestic violence, alcohol abuse, depression, PTSD due to the pandemic. Is that true?
Absolutely true. The numbers are staggering. I don't have them in front of me, but when I was looking up some of the statistics on alcohol abuse, particularly domestic violence, it was absolutely and utterly shocking that things just seemed so out of control, and people were so emotionally dysregulated that they had to find some way to throw all of this angst, frustration, anger, depression into something else. And many times that meant harming other people or themselves. Many times that meant suicide. Many times that meant just being out of control and not handling things. Road rage even went up tremendously when people would get out again and they'd start driving. Like the smallest things would set them off. I saw somebody shooting violently at someone, they had caught it on camera. And I was like, and they later said that it had to do with his frustration about the pandemic and being isolated and all those sorts of things. There were some very severe struggles for people during this whole episode.
I noticed even going into Giant Eagle, sometimes if you had on your mask and someone didn't have on their mask, they looked at you like, what's
Yes.
that for? Why do you need a mask to come to the grocery store? They're looking at you strange, and I'm just keep on pushing my cart and doing what I'm doing. But if people actually literally became offended about something like that, as though like we don't have it. We're in America. We have choices. You don't want to wear your mask, so be
Don't wear
it.
your mask.
But I'm going to put on mine as long as I need to. And so many times people get offended if you do something just different to the way they do it. When I go in the restaurant to eat, I keep on my mask till I'm ready to eat. And if my waitress is there, I prefer my waitress to have one because they're standing over me speaking. And if they have COVID, COVID can go through the eyes, the nose, or the mouth. And you're very careful. People don't want to hear that. They feel like, oh, you're being over dramatic and all of that. But if you have ever had COVID, you realize, no, I'm not. I've had COVID, and I didn't have it as bad as many people had. I really didn't have a lot of symptoms, but I don't want it again.
Sure.
I don't want to go through that. And I think people, maybe they haven't had it, so they never had it. I've watched people die from it. I've done funerals, been around people that's had it done. Nobody wants to go through that. And although they think it's a hoax, you keep that for your intention. That's your belief system. Let me hold on to mine. And I see so many people divided in our nation, all because we don't believe the same way. Does it have to be like that?
Sure.
How do you deal with a husband and wife that are in the same house that don't believe, that one doesn't believe in the mask and one does?
I have had husbands and wives where the husband was going out to the club and the wife was home just trying to like protect her space, like don't bring COVID in here. He happened to get COVID. In one case that I'm thinking about, he nearly died. But when he got healed from COVID, he was right back out at the club again. And she just started living in her own isolated space in the basement that had a bathroom and a kitchenette and didn't interact with him. So that caused some serious problems. But there were people living in the same household that, I don't believe that. I don't believe that this is really happening. That's a hoax. Then he's nearly dead. And ventilator and all the other stuff, the moment he gets fixed again, he's back out at the club doing it all over again.
Well, does he believe now he's immune from it?
Now he believes he's immune from it. So now he can definitely keep going out. Now I've got it. So this is like the way that I know I'm safe now.
And he gets delivered and somebody else dies. No, hallelujah. That is so wrong. That is so
Don't
wrong.
start, Pastor. Don't
I
start.
know, I'm gonna be nice. Because I think of somebody else who would really want to live and do better, and you, God heals you, you get better, but you go back out there and just repeat that or bring that all over again and contaminate your home. That is just hard.
Hmm.
What do you know about what this condition called COVID stress syndrome?
It's basically about the things that we've been talking about. You will notice in people that there's an increase in anxiety, depression, panic about being around others, having trouble being in isolated situations, but also being afraid of being around other people. There are all these offshoots of these things that have been happening during the pandemic where people don't know how to navigate. Do I stay to myself? Do I reach out to other people? What do I do with all this depression and sadness? I'm anxious about everything. Do I have enough toilet paper? All of those sorts of things that we saw that just pushed the panic button related to the COVID stress syndrome. People just trying to figure out how they fit and how this works in their life when we've been in this now over 2 years.
That is. Now, what about dating? How is pandemic affecting the dating? And you have to tell me, do you think the online dating is safe with the pandemic and everything that's going on? What do you think about that?
Okay, single again, and let me tell you, the pandemic boomed things like Match.com and eHarmony and all. They made money hand over fist because what they did was adapt their style. Typically, it was okay. We'll send a text. We'll do this. But now, when everybody was closed in, now they have on their app platforms that they have video. So now you can be inside the app in the safety of the app where nobody knows where you live and stuff, and they provided video services. Online dating, the pockets got really deep because they were still getting people together and they were just making a way for people to come together and be in a video setting so they could do video dates and those sorts of things. But they made lots
Oh,
of
I didn't know that. I didn't know they do video. Tell me about that one. I want to hear how that works.
you're gonna ask me about that. Okay.
Um,
Um,
no, I'm going to sing in a few people I need to recommend it to. That's no. But that's
within
interesting. So they connect you to someone, but you don't actually go out yet. You
right.
just start to learn each other. Okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of like FaceTime within the dating online dating apps, and you get to do the same thing like you and I are talking, we're getting to know each other, that sort of thing, but within the confines of the dating app. And then when the world opened up, they started facilitating dates for people and stuff like that. It was huge. It's still huge.
I'm going to ask my staff, would you all go on dating apps? Would you all try that? Look at their faces. I want them to tell me, oh, did you hear this? You know, you can talk to them. No, they're like, I don't know about that. You should see their faces like, oh, I don't know. But that sounds like it's a good idea. At least you could get to talk to the person for a while. I think this is a great idea with I've got them cornered tonight, Adrian. But I am just thinking because I said, who's going out on dates now? How do you date someone? You don't want everybody hugging you. You don't know if they have the you know you've got COVID. I don't know, but I didn't know this was in place where you could
Mhm.
actually be talking to someone in a
Sure.
safe setting. And I don't have a problem with online dating or anything like that as long as it's safe. I just don't want to see anybody going off with someone that they've never met or them picking them up and nobody knows they're gone off with them. Those are the things I'm concerned about when it
Mm,
comes to online dating. That the person is saying, "Well, I'm coming to pick you up. We're going out to dinner," but nobody in your family knows that person yet. I think even
exactly
with
what I
those
said.
things, there's some level of safety, right? Am I right?
You're right. But I would like to hope that if people are going out on dates and they want to get out of the video platform, that people in their family and their lives know where they're going. There are tracking apps for everything. I'm going to be at this restaurant at this time and turn your location on so you can see my location. Hopefully, they have those things in place.
Yeah, if they're going to do that. Listen, here's another question. Are there just some relationships that do not have the infrastructure to survive this time?
I want to say yes, but I want to also say there is work that can be done to build infrastructures in relationships if you do the work. Every relationship is not destined to be a fail because there's been problems or issues or situations or pandemics. There are things that you can do, and I'm a huge proponent, obviously, of counseling. Get in front of somebody that will help you figure out how to bolster the foundation of your relationship. If you are struggling in areas where you just can't make things work, you don't know how to talk about things, you don't know how to resolve issues, don't just decide, ah, this is over, we can't deal with each other, and we're just going to call it. Some relationships had bad foundations from the start. But if your relationship is struggling because you've gone through this pandemic and you're just trying to navigate what do we do when we don't know what to do, go and ask for help, because there are people that are equipped to help you if you really want help and you really want your covenant to be in balance and to be sustained.
So here's another one. What do you do if you've been in a relationship a long time and it's now seemed very boring and very dry?
You ask the questions. What's happening with us? What it was there a point in time where there was passion, there was excitement, we had adventures together, we felt like we were having a love affair? Well, what happened to that love affair? What happened to us being connected and wanting to spend time together and having adventures and making each other a priority? If there was once something in place that said we were these people and now there's not, ask what happened. I can tell you how I contributed to what is now gone. Can you share with me what you think has is missing? What can you say you contribute to it? Ask the questions about what happened and how we get it back if we're really interested in getting it back.
A lot of the time when the women come into my office for counseling, they'll say to me, I can't get my husband to talk. I can't get him to talk. He shuts down. I'm trying, or the men will say to me, Pastor, I just give headliners. I don't want a whole dialogue. My wife wants a whole dialogue, and I just want to give a headliner, and she wants me to explain why did I say that and how long. Do you find that is true?
I'm going to tell you what I find that's true. And particularly with Black men, women will tell me 1,000 times, my husband doesn't talk. He comes to my office, we can't shut him up because they don't feel heard. And there's a way sometimes when a woman is frustrated, same on the other side as well, but I'm just using a man as an example. They feel frustrated and they don't feel heard. So they're like, well, you ain't gonna listen to me anyway. So I'm just gonna, I don't have anything to say. But if you give somebody a platform that says, we are here because we want to understand what's going on with you. I want you to be heard. I want you to feel respected. And I get in the middle of couples and I help them navigate. No, he's talking. I don't want you interrupting him. No, she's trying to share her heart with you. So I want you to just sit back and listen and not get defensive. Sometimes you just need somebody that helps you get in there and say, this is a safe space. You will be heard. I want you to be respected. And then you'll see that communication does magically open up. Lots of times, the environment that we're put in at home doesn't give us an opportunity to really know that someone cares enough to listen to what I'm saying and cares enough to want to do something about where I say there are deficits or holes in me because they're so busy talking at you and not really wanting to engage you and find out what's going on in your heart. You can get help for that.
Do you think in our relationships we miss the previews? I love to talk about this stuff, because when people come into my office and they want to get married, I believe in at least 40 hours of counseling, and I'm
Oh,
going to
yes.
ask a hard question. I'm going to ask. I'm not. You don't want me to be your counselor when you're getting married. My staff laughs at me many times because I'm going to ask questions many other times pastors won't ask, because I think so many times we get so emotional. I'm in love. I'm in love that we totally miss the previews. And
Mm.
then when we get into marriage, we see this, and in 6 months I want to get out, but it was there before you got married. But the love, what it is that made us miss the preview. Do you see that in your relationships?
I see that all the time. I do a lot of premarital counseling, and my aim, this is going to sound ridiculous, is to break the couple up. I'm going to bring so much adversity to you. When you start out with me, I do a family tree. I want to know everybody's problems. I give you big pieces of paper to help show me what grandma did and all the things that in the relationships that went crazy. Who was gay? Who was an alcoholic? Who beat their wife? I want to know all the stuff that was up on the board so I can say, congratulations. These are all the things that may show up in your relationship. And then I tried to break the couple up. But what are you going to do if that comes up? How are you going to handle that? I want the couple to say, this is something that we're fighting for together. But you can see the cracks where people are just so in love, they haven't paid attention to marriage. Number one, for our world, is ministry. This isn't like every Friday I'm going to get flowers and that's the definition. No, that's silly. Let's not be silly. This is work. This is ministry. And the biggest word of it all is this is going to be a sacrifice. You are going to lay yourself down to be
Jesus,
married to somebody.
feel the Holy Ghost right there. Y'all can cut that out. No, I feel the Holy Ghost. Somebody gonna lay down their life for this thing to work.
Yes, absolutely. So do they miss the previews? Yes. And then by the time some people get to me, I'm sitting and watching the movie. And sometimes I will literally just sit back in my comfortable chair and watch people, and they're like, what's going oh, I'm just watching the movie. Because if you're doing this in front of me, there is no telling what's happening when I'm not at your home. People do miss the previews because they think that marriage is about the flowers and the candy, and we're going to have kids, and we're going to have a big old house and all. No. You are going to have days where you're holding on by a thread with this person, and you're going to have to figure out, Jesus, can you please come help me even want to look at this person? That's what marriage is.
It's absolutely the truth. And we need to get a reality check when it comes to
Yes.
marriage. I've seen just even on Facebook, one of the things that I don't like about Facebook is people that get on Facebook and talk about how wonderful their marriage is. He took me out on my birthday. He took me out and got me flowers. We had dinner. And I just married that God sent him. He's the man of my life. And in 6 months, we can't find him.
Or in the very moment that they were writing that Facebook post, he was cheating or she was cheating. But Facebook is
Absolutely.
such a farce. There is
And
no real relationship going on Facebook.
Look, really, I'm just like, why would you? And then they get mad when you don't see the husband anymore. And you say, well, are you still married? Well, why are you asking? Why are you in my business? Well, you put it out there how wonderful he is. And now we can't find him. We don't even see his shoe. Where is he? You know, I'm
That's
just like,
you starting stuff.
Facebook, listen, leave your stuff on Facebook if you don't want anybody to ask you
Sure.
anything. They put too many. I saw a young lady get married, and on there she said, God said, this is my husband. And she was telling many of the young people, she was saying, oh, the Lord is telling you, if you wait on him, I will do this and I will do that. And then 6 months later, we don't see them anymore. Did they miss the previews? Did she miss? You know, some say they didn't have money, they didn't have certain things. Wouldn't they have known that before they got married, Doc?
People do not ask enough questions. And I'm going to say again, premarital counseling is crucial because lots of times you get caught up in the love story and the fantasy, but you have to actually live with this person, hopefully for a lifetime, and figure out, how do we do this successfully? And Lord, let's both of us hope that we know Jesus, because we don't need him.
Oh yeah, I don't even know how marriages survive without him. I know I can only speak for myself. I've been married. The first time I was married, I'm 19 years. Second time I was married. Now I've been married 22 years, gonna be 23 years. And I'm telling you, I need Jesus every day of my life, because as you get older, you're physically, your body's changing, your mind is changing, how you see things is changing.
Yes.
And what I realized about marriage moves in seasons.
It does. Absolutely.
It really does. It's not, when we got married 20 years ago, you know, I told him I was running up and down steps. I was 40, and I'm not running nowhere. I'm not running to anything. And I have to think about that. We went on vacation. I want to go on all the tours, climb the mountains. Now, if I get to the chair, by the beach, by the water, leave me alone. I'm good. You know, so life just changes on 20 years of being together. Life changes. And so, as you're saying, it's work. It's sacrifice.
It's sacrifice.
It is, because you're changing.
Yes. Above everything else, marriage is sacrifice. In the midst of a pandemic, and when this pandemic is over, you need to remember, this is a sacrificial union that we are in. And if you put me before yourself and I put you before myself, we have a shot at making this work out okay.
Right. And what about forgiveness, though, in marriage? I mean, we know the Bible talks about 70 times 7, but as a counselor,
Mhm.
how do you help the couples with forgiveness? Because I know fences. Because can nobody cut you like your spouse now?
Absolutely.
Sometimes they can say things and you're like, where in the world did that come from?
Well,
I've heard even in my counseling sessions, I've heard husbands say to wife, um, "You have a body odor," and I'm sitting up there going, "What in front of me? Why didn't you
oh,
tell her that privately?"
oh yeah. You can
And
hear
then
all kinds of
she feels
stuff.
like she wants to slide under the table.
I
How do you help them navigate those words?
well, I know lots of people think that apologies are okay, I'm sorry, and that's it. To
No.
me, apologies are three prongs. First prong, I'm identifying that I did something that was offensive to you and that caused harm. So that sounds like I'm coming to you to apologize because when I walked away from you at the party and I started talking to another woman, I know that that didn't look good and I know that that made you feel some sort of way. So I want to make sure that I apologize for that. Second part of it is identify specifically what you did. So don't just say, I'm sorry. I saw your face. There was a moment when I saw that I hurt you and I caused you pain, and I should have stepped in then and done something different about my behavior. So I'm apologizing for that. Third part of an apology. These are the things that you don't have to worry about with me again. So I understand that this is a situation where you were hurt and you were offended. I won't do that again. You won't have to revisit this again because I understand that this is a point of pain and it triggers something in you that brings hurt. It's not just I'm sorry. Identify what you did. Tell me what you saw that you ignored that caused me to feel pain, and tell me how I never have to see that again. When you start breaking down apologies that way and you have to get into the meat of it, you start being less easy to offend people because that's a lot of work to do.
That is true because usually it's I'm sorry and we move on, and then
Mhm.
sorry for what?
Right, right.
But this way, you're actually having to acknowledge the fact that what you said or what you did was painful for me. And
Yes,
I don't want it to be repeated. So, how can we
absolutely.
address the fact that it hurt, especially if you love someone? Why would you want to keep to say something or doing something that you know hurts them?
Absolutely.
When someone does that, what does it mean, Adrian? You're telling someone what you're doing hurts. What you're doing is offensive. It hurts me. How do you handle that when they're just dismissing it like what's the big deal?
I Sometimes you have to get a little raw in counseling, and sometimes you have to say, I find it difficult. I would find it difficult. I throw myself in as the therapist to have to walk with you and share a life with you when you seem so dismissive about what your partner is telling you that they need. How do you reconcile that in yourself if you are being told, this hurts, this makes me feel inadequate, this makes me feel like I'm not enough for you? How do you navigate being able to hear these words but not do anything about it? If you are with someone that really understands that that's what love needs to look like, that you take into account and consideration what they're telling you, then you have an opportunity to get them to do something different. But some people are not married to those people. Just honestly, they are not. And the difficulty is, do I stay in a situation, if you're married, stay in a situation where I have to navigate how I'm going to respond when I know I can't expect that response from them. Lots of times you have to do enough of your own work to say, this is not something I'm going to get from them. So I have to figure out how I keep myself healed and whole when I know I'm married to somebody that doesn't care for me in that way.
Wow. Well, we don't have enough time for all this good stuff. It's time to go. They're giving me fingers telling me it's time to go, and I'm getting all in it. Adrian, thank you so much for
You're
sharing
very
this
welcome.
with us. I know it's Valentine's and all the lovey-dovey's are taking place, but I also want us to face facts. And so I thank you tonight for. I've got a lot of nuggets out of it, and I thank you so much for coming on board with us tonight. And we have your information up in case someone wants to reach out to you. But
Okay.
thank you so much for being with us tonight on Let's Talk. God bless
Thank
you.
you. God bless you.
Well, I'm so glad we have Adrian. Adrian is a part of our staff here, part of our membership here at Jubilee International Ministries. She is a licensed therapist and is doing a great work in relationships and what we want you to know. And she's going to be doing some other things later on. I think it's in March, some workshops here at the church where she's going to actually be addressing couples, talking about relationship, because that's what's under pressure. A lot of relationships are under pressure right now. A lot of people are afraid, they're fearful of committing into a relationship, not knowing where it's going to end. So we're gonna talk about those issues. We really are. So thank you so much for joining me tonight on Let's Talk. I hope it shares something. Listen, reach out to us. We're back on the air now, live every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. We have some good stuff. The singles are coming up. The couples are coming up later on. And I'm going to be talking to you about really what's unconditional love. When you tell somebody you love them, what do you really mean by that? Just like how God loves us unconditionally. Are we able to share that kind of love with someone else? Thank you so much for joining me tonight on Let's Talk. Yours truly,